Hey, this is John Carlos, and the NECA Aliens wave has provided us a lot of figures from the films Alien and Aliens, but now we finally get our first figure from Alien 3. Here's my review of the dog alien. So taking him out of the package and just getting an initial look at him, I think they did a really good job with the sculpt of this figure. There are a few little design changes, between the xenomorph and Alien to Aliens to Alien 3 and so on. And so far NECA's done a good job of capturing all those little differences. There are certain things about the dog alien that I always liked design-wise, and they capture them great here. Like his higher shoulder ridge here. I always dug how big his shoulders were, and the fact that he did not have tubes coming out of his back, because I wouldn't call him a full-blown quadruped. He can, walk on 2 feet and run on all 4, but he does spend a lot of time with his head tilted back, and his head would bump all those tubes. So there's no tubes on the back of him. Also, he had these extended, on his hips where his legs are. The tops would fin out more, and they did a good job capturing that extended piece. Also, the end of his tail is super long with that little spiky thing. But the color scheme on this figure really does capture how he appears in the film and the overall color scheme of that film, just like how the xenomorph from the Aliens one was kind of painted blue to James Cameron's blue tone. But the use of kind of coppery brown, almost an orangish brown in this figure, really well done. If we go in for a closer look, you can kind of see how detailed some of the sculpting is on this, and also just appreciate not only the paint job, but the shiny coating that went over this to create the kind of gross, shiny, wet look to this. But the use of orangey brown to me is really good. Little tiny details within the sculpt are great, like the little tubings and whatnot. Also within the double knee joints, I like the fact that there is an actual sculpted bit of a kneecap there. Same thing with the elbows. It's a double elbow joint, but there is an actual elbow piece and not just some generic piece of orange or black plastic. There's an actual sculpt to it, and I dig that. Anyway, let's take a closer look at his torso, and you just see the sculpt of it here, and his stomach, and his crotch, Basic Instinct shot, and his legs. Really strong work. Now you can see that he's got, you already saw the double knee joint and the pivoting ball hinge at the waist. But I like the fact that there's an actual swivel at his feet. That's cool. You don't see that very often with these figures, so I dig that. Also, a really good job sculpting the toes. Once you go up to the arm here, you can see the ball hinged shoulder. And none of these joints are tight, like the double elbow, the double knees, everything's going really well. Also, I like the fact that it's a swivel ball hinge for the wrist and not just a swivel. I appreciate that range of motion. Also, his head's curious. If I don't want to say nitpick, but this figure spends a lot of time in this character spends a lot of time in the film kind of running around on all 4s. So I would have liked if his head could have reared back. If we've got this one joint here, and the head kind of tilts up and down, and it's got a pretty decent range of motion. But if this neck joint here could have slid back as a secondary point, and we can get his head all the way back, so you could pose him in a running position, that would have been awesome. That complaint aside, here's a look at his mouth. And a little second mouth that comes out. Man, I think the sculpt on this mouthpiece just looks great. All the little kind of gacky lines that come down from this bottom jaw point and the top of his mouth, and the paint and the sculpt, the paint on the teeth. This is great work. Also, the fact that there's the black paint here, and then it becomes translucent, really does a good job representing the alien head. But geez, all this gack, all the time it takes to sculpt all that, and then the brown kind of orangey paint details, I really think the head, the overall figure, just turned out great. Also, here's a closer look at the tail. You can just see the sculpt of it and how good the detail is within all these little brackets, and how well painted these little brackets are. It's made of a bendy material, and I really dig the way this is sculpted, and I also dig the fact that it's not permanently attached, that there's a pivot there. So, if you want to leave it in an up position, you can pivot it kind of around the head. Now I mentioned the fact that his head doesn't go all the way back, because even though he does run around on all 4s, NECA doesn't intend that figure to be displayed this way. But you could tell they also don't intend it to be displayed fully standing, because that's not very dynamic. You've seen that with 2 other xenomorphs from Alien and Aliens, and this one runs around a lot. But it's also clear that they want him basically in a crouch position, not fully standing and not running. because they included this disc, this little figure stand with a claw thing on it. So at least you can display him in a position where he's somewhat in a running, low to the ground position, and I'll show you how this works. There's a little claw there, which kind of clips right around his waist. And if you bend his knee joints all the way, you get him into this kind of position. And then from there, at least, you know, he can, if you had more time, if I took the time, I would bend this leg out to make it look like it's running, but I like this kind of crouch position. It's creepy and I dig it. Alright, so I kicked out his leg so it looks like he's in kind of a running position, and I really dig the way that looks. And I dig this figure. I still wish they could put his head back so he's in a full-blown running style pose, but it's nice of NECA to realize he doesn't need to be standing. He's dynamic crouch down, so I like the fact they included his arm and the articulation that allows him to crouch down. And I dig this figure. I think it looks really cool. If I have any complaints about this figure, it's the fact that his legs seem a little soft. I've had this problem with another xenomorph that I bought where the leg material is kind of soft and rubbery. And this is a little bendy, it gives too much for my taste in some areas. And that makes me concerned about its stability. But that complaint aside, the paint and the sculpt is really strong, and I really dig the way that this figure can pose. I'm a big fan of the dog Alien. I think Alien 3 is an underrated film. If you've seen the extended cut, the work print cut on DVD and Blu-ray, it's a fantastic movie, so I'm really glad they are including Alien 3 in their line because it does have its fans, and this is a really cool looking xenomorph. Thanks for watching.